Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Closet Podcast. Today, I have a friend on the show. Aton Ben-Horin is a American music executive and record producer. He is the global vice president of A&R for all of Warner Music Group's labels, including Atlantic Records and Warner Brothers Records. He is also the owner of Plush Recording Studios. He is responsible for many hits with some of the most famous artists that you can think of. He's super talented, a super interesting guy, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Aton, welcome to the closet. I'm so excited to share your story with everyone today. I think you're one of probably the coolest people I know. I think I'm cooler by association just knowing you. So I just wanted you to start with letting us know kind of what is your job? I mean, I've announced you and what you do, but what does that mean on a day-to-day basis for those of us who don't know?
So I do a few things, all music related. I've been at Warner Music Group for the last 11 years. So right now I'm in it's called A&R, which is the music department. So at the label, I do everything related to music. So I discover new artists to sign to the record label. I'm in the studio with the artists when they make their albums, guide them through the recording process, help shape or find hits for the artists that need hits, and help give notes on existing songs. And every artist kind of has a different set of needs. Some of them are more hands-on. Some of them need more support on the music side. So at the label, I do everything with the music. Outside of the label, I own a management company. So that's just a little different because on the management side, you're kind of involved with every part of an artist's career, but I manage artists and producers and songwriters. And then I also own a recording studio in Orlando, Florida. So the label side is Atlantic Records. The management company is Plush Management and Plush Recording Studios. And that's the quick version.
So cool, because I always tell my patients, coming to America as a first generation immigrant, we only had 5 jobs to choose from. So I literally growing up, I just knew about doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, engineer, the typical Middle Eastern job descriptions. So whenever I meet someone like you, my first question, and we'll get back to all the cool things you do and the artists you're working with, but what my first question is, what did your parents say? Because you come from a Moroccan and Egyptian
Correct.
Jewish heritage, right? So
Correct.
what did your parents say when they saw you going down this path of music? Were they like, okay, just get your MD, but like do this as a hobby? Like what was the conversation like?
That was exactly it. I mean, they were always supportive because they like wanted to support my passion, and it was like a real passion of mine. But they were like, music is great, but get a real job. It wasn't until like I got to a certain point when they started to say, "Oh wow, okay, this is real." But it's been a journey. I mean, I've made all my money off of music related things since 15. I've had no other job since 15. It's been all music. So I had a very long journey in music way before I started at the record label. That's
So
kind
walk us through that a little bit because I know a little bit about your history, but I think it's super interesting for those that maybe are interested in following a more, creative path. For me, I always say I worked hard, but I knew what my next steps were. But sometimes when you go into a field that's more artistry or for you finding hits, like there is no guarantee of what the next step is going to be. So what did that journey look like?
Yeah, so for me, it started, I mean, early on, I was like, I took 2 years of piano, so it gave me like basics. I wasn't obsessed yet. I was just like kind of something that was like, you do it as a kid, My parents were like, oh, you should take piano. And I heard a couple of things that got me excited, but I wasn't like super duper, like this is my career yet. Then I was in the school choir. So I was very young, like I think I was like 13. So I got a head start on hearing harmonies early on. And there was always like a incredible thing. And you don't really realize that you can make a living out of it until you get to kind of know more about it. Um, and then the next thing, the thing that got me like obsessed with music was at 15, I heard Green Day for the first time. And that was it. I picked up the guitar. I learned how to play like every song on their Dookie album until like
Mm-hmm.
my fingers were almost bleeding. And then the rest of the guys, I used to play ice hockey at the time, and the rest of the guys on my team, we were all neighbors. We all like picked up an instrument and started a band. So I did like that band journey was like a very long story I could write a book about one day, just that chapter. But it was yeah, so I did like 6 years of like touring. Like we did like Simple Plan, Jimmy World, Warped Tour, Nine Inch Nails, like crazy things and all
Wow.
types of like amazing stories.
Mhm.
And then there was kind of a point when I was 17 or 18, I got exposed to dance music early on. And I was like sneaking out of the house going to raves. And most
Mhm.
people are like, oh, he's going to raves in the middle of the night. He's probably addicted to drugs. And that wasn't, I was addicted to the music. I became obsessed with the music. So I bought turntables at the time and a drum machine. I learned how to produce. And I ended up, that was a whole other journey. So I was DJing, I was producing. I ended up, I started when I got to college in Orlando. I started doing events downtown, and I was DJing at the radio station. I was DJing weekly. And then my band had taken a break, and then we get back together. So I was like DJing, producing, and then I was because the events I was throwing downtown, the other venues were like, "Wow, he's doing a great job promoting. Can you promote
Mhm.
for us as well?" And
Mm.
there was no internet back then, so it was like I had a street team putting flyers and passing out flyers, and even myself, I would go in the middle of the night and flyer every car. So then the other venues were like, "He's doing a great job. Can you promote for us?" So then I
Mm.
started a promotional company, and I was the regional manager of promotions for Ultra Music Festival, and then I ended up DJing at Ultra like 4 years in a row as well. And but that was a whole journey in that world. And then I ended up so I was doing like everything I could to survive off of music because one thing wasn't enough. So I just like hustled any way I can to make a living off of music. And then what ended up happening is I was writing. I was always like obsessed with like pop, like just hits. So I was writing songs that didn't fit the band or the DJ world, and I started in 2006. I sold my first song to Atlantic Records, ironically, which is that's where I work now. It's under Warner Music Group. And then in 2007, I had money saved up. I maxed out like all my credit cards, took a loan also, and bought what became the most popular recording studio in Orlando, where I was for college. And then when the studio, the goal with the studio wasn't just to rent it out. It was like I can use it for other stuff and leverage it. So whenever it wasn't booked, I would either be writing or producing a song in there, or I started signing local producers and managing them. And then I signed my first artist to a management, and I wrote and produced this song and developed her. And there was like a huge bidding war. I got it because it went super viral. I got a
Mhm.
big
Who was that, Aton?
it was a young artist at the time named Avery. She never became a household name, but it was like a big moment on social media. So there was a huge bidding war,
Mhm.
and I got a big check from Universal. Moved to LA, and then hired someone to run the studio back home. And then 8 months after I got to LA, I took the job at Warner Music Group. So, and then
Wow.
my first hit as an A&R, which is what we spoke about earlier, that's the music department. It stands for artist and repertoire. It's the artist and the music. So my first hit as an A&R, the label was Talk Dirty to Me by Jason Derulo. And then I
Which
had
we all know.
yeah. And then I had a slew of hits, thank God, after that. And I've been at the company for 11 years now. So it's been a crazy, crazy journey.
Oh my goodness. So what was the day job? What was the real job while you were getting things going that your parents wanted you to do?
Well, in the beginning, before everything, they were like, they wanted to give me also a work ethic and show me what it's like to work. So they just kind of forced me, like even younger, but even before 15, they forced me to like I did like filing at a dentist's office, like and then I worked at they had a friend that owned like a auto body like a shop. So I was doing helping there, and then I was helping with like I managed like um helped run a like a tattoo store, like a tattoo parlor, like there was like all this random stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was doing like handyman work and painting just to get like the work ethic. But then once I found music, like that became everything for me.
Yeah, no, I think I hear like, whether you're becoming a doctor or whether whatever you're becoming, like, I think the messaging that I keep hearing is that sometimes you have to do stuff that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, but you're getting your hands dirty, you're getting that experience. You were on, the promoter side, you were on the music creating side, you were in the mixing side as a DJ, you were actually in a band yourself. So it's kind of like understanding all the bits and pieces and the parts, not thinking anything is too much or too little, just getting what needed to get done. And that's like a running theme I see in a lot of my friends who are like super successful, is that you'll find me vacuuming my own office. You'll find me on the weekend going in and literally like Marie Kondoing and decorating, because you just do what needs to get done in order to make things work and in order to make yourself successful, if you have that grit and that work ethic, which obviously your parents instilled in you. So I want you to take me a little bit now into your childhood and your Judaism. I know you have a story to tell. We obviously met through some of the activism work. I think the first time I met you was at Kathy Heller's house when she had a Shabbat dinner for like influencers. And this guy's so cool. We did, and so that's like the first time. And as I've gotten to know you, I think you're super inspiring and awesome. So I do want you to share your story of how Judaism mixes in to sort of your not daily, but almost your motivation, how you think about things. And then I do want to get into the music world and kind of how you see um, anti-Semitism in the music world, which bubbled up with the Kanye stuff and Roger Waters and all of that stuff most recently. So why don't you take us kind of through what Judaism means to you in your life and kind of how it shaped you and your career. But also I do want to address all the stuff we've been seeing going on as of late.
Yeah. So, we said earlier, my father's Moroccan, my mom's Egyptian. So Moroccan Egyptian heritage. At the time when they were around 6 or 7 years old, they exiled all the Jews from those territories. So my mom's family, for example, had like tons of businesses, tons of real estate. They were like set, just built an empire in Egypt, and they got exiled and had to leave with nothing, like zero, like everything was gone. So they had to move from and just start from scratch in Israel.
What
Uh,
year was that, Aton?
Good question. I could find out. That's a mom and dad question, but it
No,
was.
you know why I'm thinking about that? Like I just was in Utah with one of my plastic surgeon friends, and they live in like between Milan and Switzerland. And he was telling me how, yes, he was showing me his property. He's like, this land has been in our family for generations. And I'm like, it's amazing that no Jew can point to a land and say, this has been in my family for generations. Because everywhere that we've been exiled. So hearing you say that is just another example of how that, land is not what we can hold on to. It's really our community and our religion and our education is what is in our suitcase that we carry with us everywhere.
Absolutely. And it's just wild. So they both, so they moved to Israel. They had to start from scratch. And obviously later in life they would meet. And I actually, so they moved to Miami right before I was born. So I'd never lived in Israel. But I grew up, going to Israel to visit. I have a ton of family there. And now a lot of friends, as well as business affiliates now. But growing up, I was just lots of family, amazing, incredible memories. And we were traditional, so I would do like Shabbat dinner every Friday with the family, but then I would go out with my friends after Shabbat dinner.
Same.
Yeah, the kitchen was kosher, but then outside of the kitchen, like on the way back from like soccer practice, like we would stop for like fast food at like a random place.
Same.
So
Same.
it was so that was kind of the growing up. That's and Friday nights sometimes I would go with my dad to shul, but it wasn't like a really the high holidays and just the basics. And later in life, which what's interesting is my sibling, I'm one of four siblings. Everybody kind of like my sister moves away to college. She on her own becomes religious, like not related to anything. And I like found it, going and doing her own research. And then becomes religious, gets married. My other sister, same thing. moves away to college, becomes religious out there, gets married. My brother ends up also like he was in like, three bands, like punk rock with like the spikes and all that. And then like he has a dream, something to do with like the letters of his name, and he's like, I want to study Torah. And then
Wow.
moves to Israel, then goes to Baltimore, and now he's a rabbi. So it's
Wow.
yeah. So me and my dad are the most, I would say, laxed when it comes to like like we're we're the least religious, but I guess it depends how you define a religious person, right? Like I'll drive on Shabbat. I do more than the average Jew, but I drive on Shabbat. I use my phone on Shabbat. But I'm very passionate about God and spirituality. Like everything I do, everything that happens in life is I think of God with every step. There's a reason we're on this call right now, so it's so to me, I'm very spiritual. But somebody in the religious world in Judaism would consider me non-religious because I drive on Shabbat. But I actually later in life, I also had a very special journey with Judaism, which we could talk about. I don't know how much
Yes,
time we
yes.
have, but that's a whole other story.
We have
Um,
time.
yeah, but that's kind of the beautiful thing is everyone in my family, like we all respect each other. Like they'll never tell me, why are you using your phone? It's Shabbat. Like never, ever, ever. And I'll never tell them, hey, you guys are taking this Judaism thing too far. Like I love that. I think it's amazing that they do that. It's a huge dedication, and it's beautiful to watch them do that. And my mom's like Aton, like I don't know if you know what that means, but it means like you're the most religious, in her. But even though she's being nice, but the point is they never make me feel um bad about what I do or I don't do, and then that's how I think that's the proper way of how um Judaism should be, because the moment it becomes forced, it actually drives people away from
So
religion, and
true.
people have to have their own relationship with God, and who you are as a person is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than that. I always say if I succeed and I change as a person, then in my eyes I failed my mission,
Mhm.
because what's more important than who you are as a person? I don't care how much money or success you have. If you change who you are as a person, then that's everything. That's your that and not only that, it's also your legacy, more so than how much money you made, right? It's like how you can be remembered.
It's so funny that you use the word legacy because I feel like when COVID happened and we were shut down, and I was sitting in my, home office situation over there. And I was just looking out my window of my house and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I running so fast? Like, what's the purpose? What's my why? And the word I kept coming back to was legacy. And, what am I going to leave behind for my kids? What kind of world am I going to leave behind for my kids? And I think we share that in common with how we're driven in our core values.
Absolutely, so important.
Yeah. So I want you to tell us about your revelation that sort of your pact with God and which led to your success.
Oh yeah, so this is a whole other story. So this is so we would go to Israel, probably every year, every other year. And I remember um I had been doing music since 15. I was 26 at the time, and it was like I had a lot of successes, but I still didn't have like stability financially. It was like up and down. Like there was just literally no, you can't plan anything like that. It's hard to plan. So I remember I just started to get, even though I had a lot of successes, it was like one month I would make great money. The next month I made no money. So it was
Mhm.
like up and down. I was like, how am I going to raise a family like this? It was just very stressful. And I was just thinking at the time, I was just getting stressed because even though I had done things that people live their whole lives, they don't get to do those things, that it was not paying the bills consistently. So I was like, I just started to get really stressed. And we we went on this trip to Israel around the time that all those thoughts were going through my head. We went on this trip to Israel, and I remember in the first 24 hours, I saw a couple things in Jerusalem and different things that just got me thinking more about religion in general. And that night I was at my uncle's house in Tel Aviv, and I was working on this song, and I had my headphones on. I was producing all night, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I'm still working on this song. 4 a.m. I'm working on the same song. And then randomly, my uncle wakes up. I think to get water or something. He wakes up, and then we just start talking. We had this like he's a very spiritual person. He has an amazing energy. And we just start talking about just Judaism. And that night he starts telling me, he's like, if you take on one mitzvah, what's a mitzvah? People that don't understand, not everybody knows what mitzvah is, but it's like a good deed. If you take on one mitzvah, and you never miss it, no matter what, it like holds a lot of weight. So I didn't think much of it, but that night I made a promise. Well, he suggested there's a mitzvah that you're supposed to wash your hands before you eat bread. You do that sometimes on Shabbat dinner, but really you're supposed to do it every time you eat bread. You're supposed to wash your hands before. So I made a promise that night. I'm like, to God, from now on, I'm not missing one netilat yadayim, not one washing before bread. And now, call it a coincidence, call it whatever you want. So from 15 to 26, I had like no stability. When I went on that trip to Israel, it was a 2-week trip. I had 0 contacts in music in Israel. By the end of that trip, I wrote 2 songs for Sheila at the time, who was like one of the biggest artists in the country. I land back home and I sell my first song to Atlantic. And then this crazy series of events happens, and I end up buying what becomes the biggest recording studio in Orlando. And it was like one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. Like I like my band was on tour. We would stop at like McDonald's, and I would wash before bread. I would stick a water bottle out the window of the van, and like so to this day, I've not missed one washing before bread. And people could call it a coincidence, and now thank God I'm the executive vice president of one of the biggest record labels in the world, on the music side. But it's just to go back and think of that. Some people are like, oh yeah, but you worked hard and this and that. But to me, yes, like I worked hard but I'm a believer that God, is responsible for everything. And it's our job to work hard. But like, to me, it's not a coincidence.
I think it's a different feeling that, again, I relate to. It's almost like you feel like God is the wind behind your back. Like, yes, we both work hard. A lot of people work hard, but it's a different feeling when you feel seen by God, and you feel like there's like a wind behind you, like things just are falling into place in a way that almost would be impossible. I share the same sensation sometimes.
It's powerful, and I think it also gives meaning to life, right? There's a reason we're here, and it's not just to make money.
Exactly. So you were saying earlier that there's kind of like a different story that you wanted to share about like Judaism in your life now. Do you want to delve into that?
Well, yeah, the way we met is through the Israel activism, and I was always and by the way, you do incredible work, and thank you for everything that you do, because you're an amazing person. You're hyping me up, but I gotta hype you up. You're incredible. So yeah, you're a rock star. So for me, I was always passionate about Israel, but I was never really an activist. And part of my job is to know what's happening. Like it's to know pop culture. So by default, I'm just seeing more stuff than the average person on social media, in pop culture. And I just started to notice that it was like every I don't know if you want to hear specific stories, but there was basically, like, I started to notice any one of my artists, if they mention the word Israel, if they take a picture in Israel, if they announce a show in Israel, it doesn't matter if all the other countries, they can announce a show in any other country. They could take a picture in any other country. It doesn't matter if it's like the most brutal regime or what's going on, or if they're, but when it comes to Israel, anytime they mention Israel, they get bombarded with like crazy amounts of like hate and to be honest, like a lot of it is also, I noticed it's a lot of like, some of it's real people that are just not informed. Some of it's people that are just simply anti-Semitic, and a lot of it is also fake accounts, like bots. And it's like actually government funded. Like a friend of mine did the research on one of the cases. There was a big artist that canceled their show. And a friend of mine did the research. And why did she cancel the show? It's because of the comments on social media. And my friend did the research on that case, and 90% of the comments came from 2 IP addresses in like Qatar. So it's literally like very strategic, very and it's government funded, some of it, and some of it is just but it was a lot of and as a kid, to me, it wasn't just my artist. It was like you have um thousands of young people, young kids that get their information from social media. That's their news, right? So as a kid, if you're reading, shame on you, Israel's killing babies, and it has 800 likes, you're gonna click like, and you think you're standing up for a good cause. You don't even know you don't even know what's happening about out there. And the reality is, um, well, I have a whole other thing to say about what's really going on in Israel. It's a whole other conversation, because the reality is the Palestinians that live in Israel have more rights and get better treatment than they do anywhere
Any other Arab country, yeah.
in any other country. And the funniest thing, one of my favorite parts about going to Israel is to see the coexistence between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's one of my favorite. Like last time I went, I actually made friends with a couple of Palestinians, and we exchanged phone numbers, and we it's like that's what actually leads to peace. Is the coexistence, and having obviously there's definitely people on both sides that have strong opinions and don't are doing what kind of deters from the peace thing, but really to just cancel people over Israel, or to try to cancel them or make them feel ashamed of it, is like horrific. So for me, what made me become an activist is when I noticed the severity, and I have specific examples, but the severity of how bad it was. And it just made me say, this is not like, oh, I love Israel, let me just help out and do some work because it's a nice cause. It is like, when you really know, because I see what's happening. When you really see what's happening, you start to notice this is not a choice. This is like it's a survival. Like my survival kicked in because it's not just harmful to Israel, it's harmful to Jews all over the world, because all these false information, and it's just because Israel is also, it's yes, the government has its own thing and you can disagree with the policies, but it's also like a representation. It's the only Jewish country in the world, so it's impossible not to link the two. So people say bad things about Israel, everybody relates the same thing to Jewish people. So it's impossible not to link the two. Even in the flag of Israel, there's a Jewish star. So there's no way to unlink. You can unlink the government and say, oh, yeah, we don't agree with some of the policies, but for people there's so many, all the lies about like apartheid and genocide, it's that right there is just causing so much damage for both sides. I always say, actually, I think if you're pro-Palestinian, you should actually be pro-Israel, because
they get the best treatment there, and they're like, when they get jobs, the Palestinians get jobs in Israel, they come over, they're kissing the ground because they get fair treatment and pay. Whereas if they're working on the Palestinian run side, they won't get paid, they're getting underpaid. So yeah, I mean, they are very grateful. So all this BDS stuff, also the boycotting, you're actually hurting the Palestinian workers. I remember when the whole Ben and Jerry's thing happened and Ben and Jerry's wanted to pull out of Israel, the workers that were working in that factory were Palestinian. So you're actually hurting their families.
Yeah, that's the soda stream too. So soda stream was a big one. There was it was 75% Palestinians working at that soda stream factory, and they shut it down because of all the hate. And 75%, all those hundreds of Palestinians lost their jobs. It's sad. It's terrible. So that's actually, to me, that harms both sides. It's not just standing up for Israelis. It's both. We got to be fair to both sides. And that right there is just but people think sometimes if they're not informed, the best thing, I think, is people to go actually see themselves. Go see yourself.
I wish people could. A lot of people
don't even go on an organized tour. Just go yourself and just go walk around and see really what's happening over there, and then make your own judgment. One thing, it's funny, there's every street sign it's written in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. If you are a student in the United States and you don't speak any English and you came from another country, you're forced to learn in English. Israel is the only country, there's schools that are in Arabic, and the credit is just the same. So the Palestinians, or all the Muslims that live in Israel, they can go to school in their native language. So there's so many. That's just the beginning. I mean, there's so many things that you can talk about. But yeah, but for me, it was yeah, that kind of, when I saw the severity of how bad the misinformation was, that's when I started becoming just really active in that space, because it's just, I just, to me, it's survival,
Yeah,
period.
no, that's a good way of putting it. I always say when the stuff started happening in Israel and I saw similarly my colleagues lying, it kicked in to like a guttural thing, and I call it like a core value. Like I was posting 8.5 hours a day. But when the stuff started happening in Iran, even though I lived in Iran, it wasn't the same because I didn't know if they had my back. Like if you take me and like drop me in Israel and something's happening to me, I know people will come to my rescue. If you did the same thing to me in Iran, like what would happen now? Yeah, some people would, some people might not. So for me, I think the survival thing is a really good point, and that kind of explains maybe why I was so passionately, fervently, detrimentally to my health, spending time on social media defending Israel and fighting anti-Semitism. Whereas it wasn't the same, with the whole thing, everything that's happening in Iran, which is interesting. So in your work, I mean, I know in the music industry, people try to dissuade people in this whole BDS movement. They try to dissuade the bands and the famous artists from going to Israel and performing. What can we do to, help kind of that not happen, help convince these artists that they should perform in Israel and that it is a cool place and it's not just like the desert?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of has a different role to play based on who you are and what you do. I think if you're just an average person on social media, I think it's about, you know, going out of your way and leaving just positive comments and supporting, because you're never going to get rid of the bad comments. But if you can support and leave good comments and make people feel embraced when they post about Israel, I think the more of us that do that, I think that's a important thing, because you don't want to be drowned out by all the negative comments, even if they're bots, because a lot of them are bots. I think, and in person, everybody kind of can find their own ways. Like for me, like there was a story with, like, I was in the studio with Flow Rider. Remember that artist back in the day? And
I
he,
do.
yeah, so we worked together for many years. Amazing person, amazing artist. And Israel came up, and I feel like I forgot how it came, but I think he announced a show. He was like, "I'm going to Dubai. I'm going to here. I'm going to there." I'm like, "Are you going to Israel?" He's like, "Oh, Israel." He's like, "Hell no." I'm like, "Why? What happened?" He's like, "Man, like they." I was like, "What, you think it's like a desert with, like, terrorists?" He's like, "Yeah, I just heard it's dangerous." I'm like, "No, man, you don't understand. You know, uh, Tel Aviv is like New York. You get like sushi at like 4 and 3 in the morning. You can, the nightlife is incredible. The food's incredible. The beaches." He's like, "Really?" And then somebody else chimed in, "Oh, you've never been to Israel? You should go to Jerusalem and see where Jesus walked." And then he's like, "Man, I got to go to Israel." And then a few months later, we booked a show in Israel, and it was an incredible show. It was, I was there to witness it. It was like, 15,000 people of all, races and religions. And it was just like the incredible energy. I remember he got off that stage and he was just like, wow, it was,
That's
it was
awesome.
amazing. And then he posted a picture in Jerusalem. This is actually the very first incident I noticed. And this is what he posted a picture um, from in Jerusalem, and he said, "I'm in Jerusalem, Israel, where Jesus walked. This has been such an incredible experience." And then that's when I started noticing all these people like commenting, "It's not Israel, it's Palestine. Shame on you. How dare you? This, that. Like, don't you know they're killing babies? All this stuff." And then I started to see all these comments. I'm like, wait a minute, he just had this incredible time. He's having the best time of his life, and now he's being shamed, put to shame for it. And I noticed the social media person took out the word Israel from the post. He just left Jerusalem on there.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there, I'm texting all of my friends at like 4 in the morning, "Hey, if anybody sees this, please leave some love for Flo, because this guy's getting attacked for literally doing nothing." Um, and it was like, but that was one of the first examples that happened. And then there was just some way more, like a lot. And it's funny because I noticed even deep in those Flow Rider comments, somebody, I see a comment that says, "Great job, everyone. Make sure you also tag this person and that person, and that like it was very organized. It wasn't like it wasn't his fans that were commenting that stuff. It was organized. Like they find anything from Israel, they see that it's tagged in that region, and they just go after it. And if it's an artist or an influencer or a celebrity, it's just like, so it's not even his real fans. They're commenting that stuff. That's it. So it's just people that are looking to divide, you know?
Wow. So
Yeah.
get like along the same lines, Aton, I see all the stuff happening, with Kanye these days and stuff like that. What's your take on that? Like, what do us allies, sane people, what do you think is the right way to sort of approach this new, not it's not new anti-Semitism, but like open anti-Semitism in the music world?
Throughout my music career, I worked so hard to get to where I am, and struggled for so many years. And one of the most offensive things someone said to me once is like, "Oh, you're Jewish. Of course you're successful in music." And I was like, if only you knew how many years I put into this and how hard it was, and how I didn't have stability for the majority of my career until I was 30. I had no stability in my life. I worked so hard to get here. No one in my family was in the music industry, so I didn't get anything handed to me. Even in the music industry, nobody hired me because of my Judaism. It was literally like I really had to prove. Even when I got my job at Warner Music Group, it was like it was a consultancy. It wasn't like I didn't get hired on the spot. I had to prove myself,
Right.
and I almost didn't make it through that consultancy at one point. Like I worked so hard to get to where I am. So for somebody to say, "Oh, you're Jewish, of course you're killing it in music or in the entertainment industry," that to me is the most offensive thing ever. Especially like my journeys, everybody's got their own journey in entertainment and music and what they succeeded in. But in my specific case, I worked, and put so much at risk. I risked my life to get here. I really did. And yeah, so that to me is just one example of something that I come across. But yeah, that is it was it was so hurtful, because I was such a big fan of Kanye as an artist and his music.
So I want to ask you a question. In the music industry, do you think I mean, obviously we have hope because, we're obviously fighting, but do you see it moving in a upward trajectory, in a positive trajectory with regards to how Jews are viewed in the music industry? Or do you think it's still kind of spiraling down?
I think you got everyone making their own opinions, and I don't know that there's a general thing that's happening or not. I just know that in general with anti-Semitism, it's getting worse and worse and worse in everywhere, not just in music. I mean everywhere. But yeah, it's definitely, I never in my life thought that I would live to see any of this. I'm shocked, because growing up, you hear about the Holocaust, and I actually went on a trip called the March of the Living, which is when you're 18, it's a some people go on Birthright, which is like a free trip to Israel for Jewish kids. There's another trip where you do like 1 week in Israel, and then you go. Actually, sorry. First you do one for opposite. First you do 1 week in Poland, and you go see where the Holocaust happened firsthand. You go actually to the concentration camps. You see everything, which is a very, very intense trip, especially as a kid. It's a very, very emotional thing to see. And so to go from that, then you go a week after you see that, you go to Israel for a week, and it just shows you the contrast, and you have such an appreciation for Israel, and that we have, that as our home. It's like it keeps, that's like our safety. But yeah, so for me, that was just like early on, like a very powerful thing to experience. Funny, actually, I have a whole other music story with that trip as well.
Wow. Well, in the interest of time, we've been going for like 50 minutes and I love it. But Eton, it's been amazing having you on, and I'm so inspired by your work ethic, your creativity, your ability to just pump out hit after hit, but also I'm impressed by your purpose beyond just a job and beyond just your own passion in living in a very safe, successful space that you've obviously earned. I'm just inspired by people, I think, that step outside their comfort zone and their comfy life and start putting themselves courageously in a position to really affect change on a much larger basis. And that's what you've done, not just in the music world, on social media, with all of your work, inspiring others to speak up and, do the same. So thank you for being on, and I wish you much more continued success. Can't wait to see where your next journey takes you. You guys, if you follow Aton on social media, you'll see he is just a real taste maker, change maker in the music world, and we are so blessed to have heard from you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for having me. And I could say a lot of the same things about you. You're an incredible human and an incredible soldier. And thank you for all the amazing work that you do.
Awesome. Thanks, Aton. Very cool. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe to my show and rate it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else that you're listening. And make sure you follow me on social media. See you next time.